Welcome back to the Naked Wild podcast. Thank you so much for joining us today. I have Brittney Baker with me today. She's the wife of a Marine, the mom of 4 children, the oldest sibling of 6. She was homeschooled, and now she started as the social media manager for Refuge Medical and Training, which is a multimillion-dollar company. And she has risen to the role of director of operations there. She's really passionate about using her voice and her platform to inspire and empower women to prepare themselves for all the various things we may encounter as we walk through life. So I appreciate you coming on today, Brittney.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I'm excited.
So tell us a little bit about what the heck is Refuge Medical and Training. I feel like everyone's like, okay, medical, but what do you do there?
Yeah, so Refuge Medical and Training started with manufacturing American-made first aid kits. The owner of the company was looking for a first aid kit for himself for personal use, and he just came across a lot of boo-boo things and not a lot of like high quality, actually life-saving equipment, tourniquets, chest seals, wound packing gauze. So he decided to build his own. He built his own, had a friend who had a sew shop, had him sew a bag that he liked, and then kind of showed it to a few buddies, and everybody was like, oh yeah, I totally want one. It kind of has exploded from there. We're now almost 5 years into business. We are electively in all the branches of government and all across the world. We've trained over 5,000 people on the training side because once we started selling the first aid equipment and gear, we were like, okay, that's great that people have it, but if they don't know how to use it, it's not useful. You know, you can have a firearm, but if you don't know how to use it, it's not useful. So we started our training side, and we actually traveled across the country to train people everywhere. And then kind of last year, we stepped back and started just hosting trainings at our facility here in Oklahoma.
So, you said it started with first aid kits. So are you selling directly to consumers, or are you selling mostly to organizations, or both?
Yeah, so it's going to be both. Mostly it's going to be civilians, consumers. D2C market is a really big part of it. And we're just kind of dabbling into the B2B. And then, we haven't even gotten into government contracts yet because it's kind of a race to the bottom when it comes to most of the things they buy. So we're really focused on like the mom, the dad, the football coaches, the schools. We've really tried to get first aid kits into schools around us and a lot of law enforcement and training those guys because they're the ones, every day when we need somebody, they're the ones who are coming, to render aid.
So on this podcast, I don't know if you had an opportunity to listen to any former episodes, but I interview a lot of women more this year, and really with the intention of providing education and empowering people to put their money, which is what I do, to a good use, to what's important to them and what's going to move their families forward and empower them, which it sounds like you're doing a lot of that yourself. So, what are some ways that you're working through your industry in helping women and families in the world today? You told me a story before we hopped on. And so I'd love to hear a little more about that and for you to share that with everybody.
Yeah, so I was not in the medical space before coming into Refuge. I was in the birth space. I've had 4 home births myself, and then I also went to get my doula certification back in Florida when I lived there. So I was in the medical space, but not the first aid kit side or the stop the bleed side. And I came in as just the social media manager and started really diving in. I took our full responder training and really like fell in love with the dirt medicine, TCCC, stop the bleed side. And then when I started to learn like how dangerous life is, I mean, the most dangerous thing we do in our day is drive these vehicles. We drive these giant vehicles down the road with who knows what going on in the vehicle next to us, texting somebody, and just things happen. 80% of preventable deaths is from massive bleeding. So having something like a tourniquet and wound packing gauze can absolutely save a life if you know how to use it in those cases. And once I started hearing the statistics, and we now have, I believe, 138 lives saved in the last 4, almost 5 years. We've actually gotten 2 in the last 72 hours. So once I started hearing like real life situations where this medical gear and knowledge has actually saved lives, and then you hear the stories from the family and things like that, like it only pushed me to want to push the mission to getting the mom, the dad, the grandma, the grandpa, just everyday civilians to know like, hey, carry this tourniquet on you because if you need it, you need to have it. It's one of those things that you don't want to wish you had because if you don't have it, you can makeshift one, but you can't always get it correct. And if you don't know what you're doing and things like that. So the whole training side that we've really developed and started going out and teaching people, it's really interesting what you do when you're in a stressful situation. You don't know how you're going to react until you're in it. And we do scenario based training. So we actually put you into, hey, this is the scenario, this is what's going on, and then put them in the room. And there is actors and they're real people. There is fake blood. There are, cadre members that are teaching them through it. And then they kind of give them a debrief afterwards, like, hey, you did this and that was excellent, but think about doing this, this, and this next time. And really catering to their life and what's going on. We also go into companies and threat assess what could happen to them, because we've had several like manufacturing facilities. We had somebody who was caught in a conveyor belt and his arm was caught in it and they had to apply a tourniquet to save his life because he was bleeding. And accidents happen everywhere. And you are the only person who's going to be at your own accident. So you got to have the knowledge.
So how does your home birthing experience translate to this area of work? Because you mentioned that in your bio. So sounds like it's something you're really passionate about and looking to inform women about. And I imagine there's some interwoven aspects to this industry.
Yeah, so I had 4 home water births. My mom actually had a few of my siblings in home births. So I was already kind of in the space. I trusted it. I really enjoyed being in my comfort zone of my own home. And then I went into being a doula. So a doula is not a midwife. They're more the support for the mom and the dad in the birth space. They don't have the medical knowledge, but they are there to support and talk through and kind of counsel. So I was working on getting my doula certification, and part of your certification is you have to do 3 births and do all the paperwork and submit it to get your certificate at the end. And my first doula experience in the hospital, the woman had an AFE, which is an amniotic fluid embolism, and the amniotic fluid reversed into her bloodstream, and she coded while she was talking to me. And they took me and the dad out of the room and actually had to give her chest compressions while they were giving her a C-section in that room. Um, Able to save her and the baby. It is like a 1 in a million. It is such a rare thing that happens. But that was my intro into the medical space. Not even the beginning, but it was a really stressful situation that I was thrown into. She is still alive and the baby is still alive. They were able to save both of them. And she's actually celebrating her 5th birthday next month. So totally intro into everything. And I realized through that whole stressful situation that my brain, I was thinking through it all. I remember everything that happened. I was able to be there for the other people in the room. I realized that I thrived in that situation. And I definitely took things of being the oldest of 6 and always kind of being the mother to my siblings growing up and taking care of them, that I was able to multitask and be in the stressful situation. And that's really what put me into okay, I really like birth. I really like, helping people. I was doing serving jobs and customer service things, so I knew that I loved the connection with other people. And then kind of coming into Refuge, I just started as social media. Met my husband who was working for the company, and I was like, hey, you guys should be using things like TikTok and Instagram and stuff, and you guys are not. So I'll just do it for free. And then I basically was just started doing whatever needed to be done. And now I'm the director of operations of the company that leads a team of people that I love. So it's definitely been a crazy space so far at only 28 years old.
I know, I was gonna say you look very young. And tell me a bit more. You mentioned you had a birth kit.
Yes. So we have a and postpartum bucket. They're actually built into 5-gallon buckets. Anybody who's in the prepper space knows the 5-gallon buckets are great for storing things. They're watertight, they're food safe. And so we built a birth bucket, which is designed for everything that you essentially need to bring the baby into the world. There's not a lot of comfort items in there. It's all the necessary items. There are things like oral rehydration salts and a baby blanket and a hat. But there's also things like the cord clamp, washcloths, the scissors that you would need to cut the cord and things like that. And then the postpartum bucket is for the mom. So it's got the pads and the icicles and extra blankets and things like that that are just to support her after she brought an entire human into the world. sometimes people forget about the mom in those situations and they just want to hold the baby. And you're like, no, like the mom just did a lot of hard work. We got to take care of
I
her.
had this
So,
I recorded a podcast the other day, so if anybody listening to this, listen to the podcast. It hasn't dropped yet, but by the time this has dropped and everybody's listening, if you go back one podcast, there's a lot of the conversation was with Bree Johnson centering around caring for the mom and how everybody does go right to baby and the attention goes to baby and the mom really loses a lot of that care and nurturing that really is necessary in that postpartum time, up into the 4th trimester.
yep, yep, that's definitely it's the time that the mom she's been doing all this hard work, but she's really doing the hardest amount of work at that very end. And then she has to heal and take care of a new baby, and who knows what else is going on in life that she now has to, get back into the groove of doing, especially if you're a mom with multiple kids.
As I was gonna say, the other 3. On your training side of things, I mean, obviously first aid training and training even to use, like, oh, my spouse is pregnant and I want to be prepared just in case we don't get to the hospital or to just keep in our car. One of these buckets, for example, is that something you only provide in person? Do you also have some online content? How is that delivered?
Yeah, so we do have a lot on our YouTube channel. We have a lot of informational videos that we like to call it. We believe that training really happens hands on. I can show you on a video how to use a tourniquet, but I can't actually check to see if you're using it correctly. So we do have a lot of informational videos, but all of our training is in person, and we are slowly working towards trying to get a more in depth online, like training course school, but a lot, hands-on in person is really the best thing when it comes to these
Yeah,
situations.
that makes sense. So when you do that though, like, are you like, say I'm in Massachusetts and I wanted to buy a kit for my office, like that seems like for something that's probably not a huge cost. I mean, a big investment to have someone come here. I mean, are you paying for the training separately? Will you even sell the kits without the training? I guess I'm trying to understand the how that all works.
You're good. Those are great questions. Yeah. So we do not require training for most of the first aid kits. There are a select few higher end items that go in them that we do, ask for credentials and things like that. But, you can buy the kits and you can have it sitting in your office. But we always teach and try to tell people like, you need to train with it. You need to open up that kit and know where everything is because that's the last thing you want to do in a stressful situation is open and fumble and try to look for things and then remember how to use it. So, yeah, we really focus on having the first aid kit is awesome, but getting the training is great. And a great place to start is those informational videos on all our social media channels. We did travel the country up until this year, 2024. We traveled all across the country to basically almost every state to train people. And then we just we had a few staff members who were having babies this year, so we brought them home. But we hope to be back on the road spring of next year.
All right, that's neat that you'll go out and do that. What are the top things people are worried about? What sort of things are people really coming to you with concerns about?
Yeah, so a lot of the concerns come with, I mean, we all know that things are crazy in the world right now. There are things happening every day. I just heard about that there was a school somewhere in the country that was undergoing a hostage situation and things like that. So a lot of people are worried about their kids in school or their kids that are just in their vehicles and driving for the first time. I know my parents were terrified when I took that first drive without them. So it's a lot of parents that are worried about their kids and they want their kids to be protected and trained. And then a lot of people who are going across country and they're, traveling because one of the most dangerous things we do is driving a vehicle every day. And then people who go to ranges and go camping out in the middle of the woods or hiking, where emergency higher level of care is going to take a while to get to you. And we have a lot of people who live in rural areas of the country and they know that EMS takes, 20, 30 plus minutes to get to where they are if they're available. Because in these rural areas, there's one or two ambulances. And if something else is going on, they can't make it everywhere. There's only so many of them in the space. So there's just a lot of people who realize that they need to be their own first responder because you just can't snap your fingers and have a hospital and an EMT and a doctor show up. One of the things that if you need a tourniquet because you had an arterial bleed, it means you now just won the surgery lottery. Like you now need to go to surgery for them to stitch you back up and close it. So what people don't realize is like, I think Hollywood and videos and TV and stuff has made it look so breezy and easy and that it just kind of happens. And it's like once you're in those situations, it's stressful. Like, it is not a time that you want to be frantic, running around, not knowing what to do. So people are really realizing, like, they want to feel protected with what they have on them at any given moment of the day.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. It's not something that I feel like I've thought a lot about. I don't want to be caught unprepared, but probably would be caught unprepared. So it's an important conversation, and I appreciate you bringing it to the forefront. So in terms of, you're busy mom, wife, you're the director of operations at this large company. You're clearly very passionate about your work. So what are some strategies you use in terms of kind of keeping it all together? I think a lot of times people say, well, I can't do this because I have a lot of kids or I have mom or, and I think it's important that if somebody really feels led to take a bold step in a direction that they're not held back by those self-doubts, and you're definitely an example of somebody who's doing a lot of things and very passionately about all of them. So, yeah, I'd love to just hear a little bit about, how you make it work strategically or mentally and emotionally, however you'd like to tackle the question.
Yeah, so that's definitely a big question. I will start with saying there is no balance. There's no such thing as like even balance between work and life and things like that. I've been lately trying to focus on because I recognized seeing other people go through the burnout when it comes to work environments that I was like, okay, I need to make sure that I don't hit that point. So something I've been doing when it comes to work is I do 100% of my 80% because there has to be something left in my cup to bring home to my husband and kids. So I give 100% of myself, but it's 80%, it's 100% of my 80% because that 20% is saved for my 4 kids that are under the age of 10, and my husband and, busy life. The main part that keeps me going and focused is I love the mission of the company I work for, stand behind it, definitely would be pushing the mission even if I didn't work for this company of Refuge. But I also work with basically family. I work with several definitely family members, but also friends that I consider family. So I love my work environment. I wake up every day and look forward to going to work because I work with my best friends. And there are, you don't always like your family. So there are still things that you got to work through and you have to have hard conversations. When I was just at the Women in Business conference back in July, one of the speakers said that hard things don't get easier to say with time. And that really hit me. I was like, okay, I got to say the hard things quicker because I just need to have those conversations and move past it. Sometimes there's just things that you have to have hard conversations about and you got to be able to talk it out. And then you can either agree to disagree, or maybe I wasn't thinking about something and you were thinking about it. And, you just got to compromise and work through those situations. So I definitely have worked through making sure I don't have burnout and making sure I'm doing something that I love. That whole saying of like, if you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life. It's actually true. So really find something you love doing and you're passionate about, and then figure out how you can make money with it. It's 2024, so there is endless possibilities of ways to do what you love and make money from it and provide value. Actually add value to this space because I feel like there's not as many people adding value as there are just adding junk. And I'm not in the business of just adding more junk into the world. I really want to provide value and laughter and smiles and just be the light in this world that seems to be, getting dark in certain areas. So be the change you want to see.
I love all that. Thanks for sharing all that. That was a really great way to end. I do like to ask everybody about their favorite book. What's your favorite book?
Yeah, so my favorite book right now that I've recently read is Smart Brevity. And I think it's a really good book that if anybody is in the space of like communication or management or leadership or just has any sort of communication with people in the world, like Smart Brevity was a quick read, but I got so much out of it. And I actually just started passing it on to everybody on my team.
Oh, that's one I haven't heard. So I'm gonna check that one out. Yeah, well, I appreciate your time. I appreciate your candor. And I appreciate what you're doing in the world. I think it's super important in the conviction and energy that you put behind it and the willingness, courage to be light, not just, you desire to, but the courage, because sometimes that's hard, like those hard conversations. So it takes hard conversations to shine a light sometimes. So appreciate you. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, I appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Securities and advisory services are offered through LPL Financial, a registered investment advisor, member of FINRA, SIPC.